Listen, better late than never, right? Better late than never. Let's get the Red Gold and Bold podcast going. Proudly brought to you by our friends at GAN Asphalt and Concrete, along with the superstar diva himself, Eric Eager, Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB, of course, Eric Eager from Sumer Sports. We got a lot to cover tonight. Patrick Mahomes is not interested in a second Thursday game. At least that's what I think the emoji meant on his tweet, but one's probably coming to Kansas City soon. Expectations for the Chiefs draft, what should they be? Andy Reid says he's comfortable with his wide receivers. I does expect a jump from Kadarius Toney. Mecole Hardman went to the Jets, but just 1 year, $6.5 million. That surprised the Chiefs. Did it surprise you? Andy Reid says they did try to keep JuJu Smith-Schuster. Could Justin Watson be back? The draft and wide receiver talk. It's what we got going here. It's the Red Gold and Bold podcast brought to you by GAN Asphalt and Concrete.
You're listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro was the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by GAN Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GANasphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. GAN Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. GAN Asphalt and Concrete is now hiring for all positions: project manager, dump truck drivers, operators, and crew members. Starting pay up to $30 per hour based on experience, with paid time off and insurance, just to name a few of the benefits. Check out GANasphalt.com for more info. Now, here are the hosts of the best Chiefs podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
And good evening and welcome as we come to you usually live at around 8 p.m. is the time that some of us want to go at, and some of us are here around that time. We're just going to get as much mileage out of this as we possibly can.
I'm on time to basically every single podcast. I apologize for this one. Holy buckets.
Help me out here before we dive into the actual topics. Why is it the guy that's actually the computer nerd is the guy that has the most problems with his computer? What does that mean?
That is strange.
How does that work?
This is like, for people, I have a computer that I code with. I have a computer that I do podcasts with. And the computer that I podcast with is literally on its last legs. Like, this is the DeAndre Hopkins of computers. And so, like, that's the real issue, is that this one, and I've been waiting for people, by the way, anybody want to learn about data science?
Yeah, the computer's a gem, all right?
Yeah,
it's a gem.
Right on time.
I love it. He immediately freezes up. That is absolutely fantastic. Oh, man. We'll see. He'll figure it out. He'll reboot. He'll be back in a few minutes, but we're off and running now. So we're gonna get moving. We did have a number of comments about docking Eric's pay for being late. Should I just bounce him? Should I just toss him, or do we want just like the ghost of Eric Eager to just
keep him right there like that?
We'll keep him on the on the screen. A lot of people speculating about what he was doing. Did he have enough moose?
I'm back.
Come on, Eager. How about it's a podcast. You don't need the spray. Like, this one's my favorite. I don't think I'll even add it to the podcast, but for those that have the treat of it live, could have been. I don't know. Maybe just a cover story. I don't know, Eric. You got to move constantly, or we don't know if you're actually with us or frozen. Or do you like constant movement?
I honestly
hang on. Time out real quick before you go for 5 minutes about coding or something. Jeff Chadiha is the one in Lubbock, Texas.
Yeah.
So it's just, he's getting ready for a Texas Tech Pro Day. He's the guy on the road. You're at your home base, right?
I am, and my other computer is working. My phone is working. It's dead. It's dead ass this one. But here, the issue is again. I was waiting until my book got finished to buy a new computer so that I could do all this good non-Sumer sports stuff. And this one's on its last, fucking legs. I'm going to use the one swear word we get so that Petro can't use it. And it does drive me insane a little bit. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, you can use it on Too Deep tonight. You can use your swear word on Too Deep.
I'll try to avoid it. Let's get going here on some real topics and the NFL. And earlier tonight, we generally stream live at 8 o'clock, 8:15-ish tonight. And the commissioner, Roger Goodell, speaking tonight about a number of issues that were out as the NFL league meetings are going on. One of them was Thursday night. Of course, if you're a fan of our podcast, we also do our Too Deep NFL podcast. You can catch that as well wherever you get your podcast. We stream that live after the Red, Gold, and Bold, so that'll come up next if you're streaming live with us here on a Tuesday night. But we'll get more into that Tuesday aspect of it. But Patrick Mahomes has already tweeted a statement that, yes, they've okayed a second Thursday night game for teams, but they did not shoot down, but tabled the idea of flexing the Thursday night game. And Patrick Mahomes' reaction was the slap your face emoji that was there. Jeff, let's start with it. A second Thursday night game. I get it. Why you want to do it money wise. You want to get better teams. You want to make that Thursday night spot better. But Patrick Mahomes knows that means the Kansas City Chiefs are automatically on twice for Thursday. Because right now, when you're the big dog, you get as many national TV games as you can, which is already a challenge. I think the Chiefs, what do we say? The first 6 games, they played at 6 different times this past year. That's not going to make it any easier for the Kansas City Chiefs, is it?
No, and when you want to keep winning championships, you want people to stay healthy. And that was probably one of the most underrated parts of the Chiefs' success last year was that they were a really healthy team, especially down the stretch. And you start looking at some of the teams that faltered because of injuries, whether it's the Bengals, the Bills obviously lost a big player. The Chargers had tons of injuries. The Niners lost a key player. I don't know all the data when it comes to injuries, but it felt like a lot of big name players were hurt last year. And we know the players are not big fans of Thursday night anyway. We know that's not going to go away. We know 17 games isn't going to go away, but it's to keep adding more. I think just pushing the envelope just a little bit more. I think at some point, as an owner, you have to say, as an owner who wants to win a championship, you have to say this is good for business. Because I understand that putting money in your pockets and having those games on TV and those TV deals do mean a lot to this league's success and to the players as well. But I have to imagine more guys are going to start getting hurt because you have less time to rest. You're putting more of an onus on them. And if you're, as Mahomes said, if you're one of a team like the Chiefs, you're going to be in that slot a lot. And that's not a good thing if you want to keep winning championships.
Yeah. Listen, at some point it does start to become a competitive disadvantage, doesn't it, Eric? You got any numbers that say what it is when you got to play all over the map at different times?
Well, for one, I can't believe people moved on from making fun of my hair to my skin tone, but we'll avoid that. So yes, so there is, there's evidence. Well, for one, last season, like Jeff's right. Like there was the most starting quarterbacks in the history of the NFL. If you take out the strike year of 1987, there were the record was 64. They eclipsed that like with a week to go. Now we do have more weeks, which again, is more to the point. Like you have to, and there's one fewer bye often as well, right? So you think about like what it takes to win a Super Bowl now. You have to play one more regular season game, and unless you get one of the 2 byes that exist as opposed to the 4 byes, you have to play another playoff game. And we saw that with Tristan Wirfs playing the 2-7 game in 2021. We've seen that a number of times where guys are getting hurt during games that they otherwise wouldn't have to play. That hurts, right? So there is the Thursday night games are not great. I think that they've done There's also, in the meetings, they were also looking at the hip drop tackle sort of thing as well. It just seems like the league wants to, and we're just coming off of the gun violence too. Like, it feels like for like every problem in society, we want to solve like an adjacent problem that has kind of nothing to do with it. And then we want to perpetuate the BS that causes it. So we want to like outlaw hip drop tackles, which do affect, they do cause injuries at a rate that's higher than normal tackles. But like, if we just like gave the players like a more humane schedule, we'd probably, actually have less injuries. And so it's just kind of funny that way, right? Where, we're sort of picking at the edges of the pie, and the whole pie is causing more injuries.
Yeah, this is going to be, we had the comment up there about this is just the owners coming up with something to, be able to throw out in the next negotiation. That sounds good, but I don't think so. I think
they love 18.
But we do have to be careful. Like, we do have to acknowledge the fact that Amazon paid a ton of money for that Thursday night package. And
so let the contract play out before you immediately start to.
I agree, but Al Michaels, my guy, was done with that season, like halfway through the season, right? Like, you can hear it in his voice. I texted my former boss and friend Chris Collinsworth. I'm like, you can tell it in his voice that Al has Eagles -14 in this game, and it's the only thing keeping him in the thing. Like, and again, I know, Petro, you're gonna say, well, be better, and I agree. But like, other than Chargers Chiefs, what game on that Thursday night schedule was worth watching? None. They were all bad.
First of all,
they paid Al Michaels a bag to pair with the guy who doesn't even watch NFL football.
Right. But I want to focus on the Chiefs part right now, and what it means for better teams that are in this league, and it means that they're going to have to go more. Tommy Moe asked the question about, doesn't every team have to appear once on there? And so 32 teams times 18 weeks, 17 games, there's 36 slots. Yes, you can still fulfill that, or if they're only going to do 17 weeks because they don't want to do one on the final week, or however it's going to work. Because the first Thursday goes to NBC on that package. It's fine. Let's take it 17. That's 34 slots. That means 4 times that they could go for a team to get a second viewing, Jeff. I mean, that's going to be your best teams. And I get it. You want to improve the ratings, but you're also then running the risk of damaging your best teams before they get to your biggest payday, which is the playoffs.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, I understand Al Michaels' complaints about it, but you're never going to be able to go into a season trying to predict who's going to be playing the best matchups when they ultimately end up happening. Like, we all thought the AFC West was going to be killer, and it wasn't. Nobody was sitting here talking about how great some of these other teams were going to be. We didn't see Jacksonville coming out of nowhere to be involved with this. So, yeah, I think the Chiefs, we'll see how it plays out, right? They're not going to do the flex just yet. But, yeah, I would expect if they're going to actually have a team who's playing twice, they're going to be the first name up. And it's going to be a problem. Yeah. It's going to be a problem.
For sure. And there's to Jeff's point, this is like the old Monday Night Football schedule. Like, there's no guarantee, and we're bad at predicting these things. Like, look, everybody talked about, and now, by the way, everybody see the win totals come out. The Chiefs have one of the easiest schedules in the NFL this year per the Vegas markets. Last year, everybody said they had the hardest, right? And you look down the stretch of last year, it's Chiefs-Rams. That looked like a great game on paper. Terrible. What if that was the second Thursday night game? What if you risk the Chiefs losing Mahomes because they got to play some bad NFC team that we think is good, right? Or like, then it was Bengals-Chiefs. That was fine. Chiefs-Broncos, a joke. Chiefs-Texans, a joke. Chiefs-Seahawks, a joke. Chiefs-Broncos, another joke. Chiefs-Raiders, a playoff team from the year before, a joke. Like, and they flex that Chiefs-Raiders game to a Saturday, and it's like, no one wants to watch this. And like, that is also, I think, one of the issues with this whole deal is like, okay, you're going to put the Chiefs on 2 Thursday night games. There's no guarantee that the team that they're going to face on that Thursday night game is any good.
But it's not just about the game being competitive. The Chiefs bring the star teams bring viewers.
Well, I know Sam said that. Sam McDowell said this. Like, the Chiefs, the Kansas City media market watches football like religion. Like, if you look at like these standalone games, it's like the 2 teams involved, and then Kansas City watches like And so, yeah, they come out for the Chiefs and they come out for everybody. And I get that. But from the league's perspective, if the Chiefs go in and blow a team, like that Chiefs-Raiders game at the end of the year being like 38-10 or whatever it was, like that game sucks. And you've also weakened one of the best teams in the NFL by making them play a second Thursday game, which is not great either. I mean, the Bills lost Von Miller on a Thursday morning game.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the draft and what the expectations are. We're now about 4 weeks away from the NFL draft. The Chiefs coming off a great draft. Brett Veach had a fantastic showing, as we know, 10 rookies playing in the postseason, eight of them on the defensive side of the ball. I forget how many were starting. The draft was a huge component to the Chiefs winning. And we're watching again. We're going to talk a lot about the wide receivers, but JuJu Smith-Schuster gone, Mecole Hardman gone, Orlando Brown gone. They've replaced him with a free agent signing. But on the other side, they lose Andrew Wiley. You know, they've got one defensive lineman, but watch two of them leave. It's important that they have a good draft, but do Chiefs fans need to temper their expectations? They don't have, they have a lot of picks. They don't have the quantity of picks up high that they had last year, Jeff. I mean, do they need to be a little bit tempered in what they're expecting out of this year?
Yeah, I mean, like Brett Veach struck gold last year, and it was one of the best drafts, probably one of the better drafts you'll see any team have in the last decade in terms of guys contributing. But ultimately, if you're having a really good draft, if half the guys you get come in and can help you in year one, and that's the reality. There aren't a lot of spots on this team to come in and contribute right away. And some of the spots that you would ask guys to do that are spots that are very difficult to come in and have maximum contributions right away as an edge rusher, as an offensive tackle, as a receiver. And so, yeah, a guy like Isaiah Pacheco can come in here and help this team win a championship, but being a running back is not the hardest position in the world to play. Same thing with corner to a certain degree when you actually have, some help like a L'Jarius Sneed in there, good players around you. So, yeah, I mean, I think where they're going to draft and what they're going to draft for need, it's not going to be someone coming in here and blowing it up right away. I think you look at George Karlaftis as being a perfect example of this, a guy who played better as time went on, but for the first 10 games, he was nowhere to be found. I mean, he had a play here, a play there, but that's what you're going to get more often with rookies.
Eric, I think Jeff makes a pretty good point. The positions they need, a tackle, a wideout, again, an edge rusher. George Karlaftis did finish strong, but now you're replacing Frank Clark. I know they've signed a Menahu, but we've discussed he kind of looks more like a tweener type than just a roar off the edge type of pass rusher. Is that another reason, in addition to less picks up top? We've talked a lot about where you got to go get those guys. Okay, you didn't have the step back in the year that you thought you're going to have the step back, but that was all based on Tyreek Hill. Now the quantity of losses. This year, even though, as you just pointed out, the schedule might be easier, it's going to be tougher to fill all these holes, and there might be a step back for the Chiefs.
Yeah, Jeff makes a great point. I mean, corner's the one where they threw numbers at a valuable position and made hay, but people forget that McDuffie missed half the year, and Joshua Williams, like in the Buffalo game, was one of the reasons they lost, right? And so it wasn't for Karlaftis in the corners. It wasn't like love at first sight. I know Watson made a big play against the Chargers, but like they struggled for a lot of the year. And then we were talking about the defenses, like, can this defense win a championship halfway through the year? Because they were playing with rookie corners and they were dealing with it. Right. And so to Jeff's point, like you look at the rest of the guys that really hit for them, you're looking at like a third safety, a third linebacker, a running back, which is not a premium position. It was not positions that are all that like, and even like Karlaftis was not great right away. And that's where I think like Chiefs fans, you got to look at where the free agent signings were, and you have to say, okay, the draft is always for a year later. Like I know Chiefs got lucky last year, and their draft helped them win a Super Bowl, but for the most part, the draft is for years later. And when you look at guys that they've let go, it's because of draft picks that they've had in a year subsequent. Like you look, Brian Cook was a reason to let Juan Thornhill go. Karlaftis was a reason to let Frank Clark go. So on and so forth. L'Jarius Sneed was a guy to let Charvarius Ward go. All that kind of stuff. And so when I look at this draft, I think, okay, Jawan Taylor was signed so that a tackle wasn't an immediate need. Like if we don't get out of the first round without a tackle, we're screwed. Like Jawan Taylor gets them out of that realm. Sky Moore's a second-round pick. Kadarius Toney's a first-round pick. Valdez-Scantling is a legitimate, free agent signing. If they don't come out of this draft with a starter at wide receiver, they're still going to be able to field a team next year. Same thing with defensive end. But the other part about Amenahu that people aren't getting, and also why defensive tackle is a realistic chance for them at 31 or earlier, depending upon if they trade up, is Amenahu's not only there to fill out Frank Clark, but he's there to fill out the interior with the loss of Kylan Saunders and with Derek Nottie kind of being bad and all that kind of stuff. Like he's there for 2 spots. So I do agree. Like I think we just need to be a little bit careful about what to expect out of this draft. And we were a little bit spoiled by how well this draft contributed to the first year. That is not a thing to expect in every year.
The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by our friends at GAN Asphalt and Concrete, making parking lot problems disappear. Since 1994, full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. They are nationally recognized, serving the entire metro area, including OP, Independence, you name it, east to west, north to south. They cover it all. GAN Asphalt and Concrete. If your business has any problems with their parking lot, make sure you find them online at ganasphalt.com or call 816-484 3338. Let's talk about Andy Reid's comments at the league meetings where he said he's comfortable with his wide receivers. Jeff, are you buying that he is comfortable with the group of wide receivers he has right now? If you haven't checked your wide receiver depth chart lately before Jeff responds to that, I'll remind people, if you lined up and went 3 wide to start, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Kadarius Toney, and Sky Moore would be your starters.
3 playoff legends, if you ask me, by the way.
Yeah, second wave, Justin Ross, Cornell Powell, Emir Smith-Marset. Next
Iowa legend, Emir Smith-Marset.
Next
Petro,
wave.
you're bad with the names, by the way.
Running back convert. Yes, I'm bad with the names. Jerrion Ely and Ty Freifogel.
Ty Freifogel, good contested catch guy at Indiana. I won many a DFS lineups with him in my DFS lineup. Him catching balls from Michael Penix Jr.
Michael Penis?
What did you say?
I said Penix.
Okay.
I was going down the same road, but you beat me too. Jeff, does that collection of 8 wide receivers leave you feeling like it's all good?
No. And I guarantee you, Andy Reid, when he looks at that roster, he's probably not looking at it very often these days because he wants to fill it out with people he knows can catch passes and run his offense. But I've seen coaches who have had a lot of success who feel like whoever I get, I'll make it work. We'll scheme it up. We got the great quarterback. You don't want to play this game and start thinking, as Bill Belichick once did, that you can just put anybody out there with a great quarterback and your offense is going to work. Like I don't see them going into the season with those 3 guys, Valdez-Scantling, Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, being maybe their best options at receiver. I think Sky Moore has a lot to prove. I've said it before. Kadarius Toney is more of a gadget guy right now, and Valdez-Scantling is hit and miss. And when he hits, like in the AFC Championship game, he's great. But a lot of people who watch this podcast were complaining about him multiple times during the season about dropping passes. And so the problem you have is, and we've talked about this before, is like, where do you go find these guys? I had this a guy who I trust, a longtime scout, said, maybe Jarvis Landry is the kind of guy they should be looking at. And maybe that's a guy you bring in, later in the offseason for a 1-year minimum deal who can help you out. It's really challenging to find receivers who are going to be okay being, as Eric said a few weeks ago, catching a couple balls 1 week, 0 the next, 8 after that. And because guys want to make money. And so JuJu was able to make money here because he took that role and it worked and they won a championship with him. But he also had a resume to go with it. I think what they're looking at now is guys who are either long in the tooth. I think whoever, I think it was Tommy, your buddy, had said, let's forget about the OBJ, DeAndre Hopkins talk, which is legit. I mean, those really aren't options for them. OBJ's going to want a lot of money. Hopkins costs a lot of money. But you can't go in the draft and find somebody right away because those guys never really work in Andy Reid's offense right away. So, yeah, I think it's a challenge to find somebody to complement what they have.
Okay, I got 3 points to make here. A, why when Jeff, who's absolutely correct, says that OBJ and Hopkins are not an option for the Chiefs, everybody nods. And when I say it, I get my Twitter burned to the ground because for saying he does. They don't. DeAndre Hopkins is not fit on this team.
I think the reason why you get that reaction is one guy can show up on time or can tell
That's
time,
right.
and one guy can't.
Yeah.
God damn. Okay. All right. Secondly, somebody said this really. I think it was Jim Unruh. If I pronounce your name correctly, unlike Petro at Everwood, but he said they're rarely being 3 wide. I do think you have Kelsey, Blake Bell, Fortson, and Noah Gray, who quietly was 5th on the team in receiving this year. Noah Gray is a good player. There's also a lot of tight ends kind of in that kind of right in that realm this year that might be draftable. But the third one, and Petro, this was my first year of being on the radio with you. You remember when the Chiefs cut Jeremy Maclin, right?
Yeah.
And this was Tyreek, and I went back and I'm going to throw some statistics at you. Tyreek Hill as a rookie carried the ball 27 times, total. He's never eclipsed that number ever again. He had basically, I think it was 25% of his passes, 27 were behind the line of scrimmage as a rookie. His average depth of target was 7.5 yards. The following year was 11.5. And he had only, I think, 19 targets or something like that, more than 10 yards downfield. And then the following year, it was quadrupled or something like that. There was really no evidence other than Tyreek Hill was Tyreek Hill in his rookie year was a very small version of what Cordero Patterson was as a rookie. And they made him, and Andy Reid identified him as a number. The only evidence that we had in 2017 that Tyreek was a wide receiver 1 was that Andy Reid thought he was. That's it, right? Because the back end of that receiving roster was Chris Conley, Albert Wilson, Demarcus Robinson, and I'm trying to remember it was a bunch of busters, just like this group is. So I think again, we all have issues with Kadarius Toney. You said famously he's never run a route. I do think but I think that there is some signal in the fact that Andy looks at Sky Moore, and he said as much and said he can replace JuJu, and he looks at Kadarius Toney. He said this can be our wide receiver 1. There is some signal there. Now, appeals to authority are normally just ways to get around actually arguing a point. But I do think this kind of mirrors that. We've seen this before in Kansas City with the wide receiver position. And people forget in 2017, Alex Smith led the league in passer rating. And that was a pretty damn good offense. And Tyreek Hill was emerging as a wide receiver 1. So I'm just going to kind of make a comparison there. Just for that its own sake.
He also said Josh Gordon still had a lot left in the tank.
I mean, so did Petro. I mean, who among us didn't fall prey to Josh Gordon?
Yeah. Listen, I'm not paid as a scout. I just look at the numbers that I've seen in the past to make it go. But yes, I think there was reason to believe. Hey, he made some great catches in. Is it the XFL or AFL? Which league? There's 2 leagues going on now. USFL is going now too. Can't remember which league he's playing in. A couple things that are up here. One, I did forget John Ross. There was a question about John Ross, the former Bengal and Washington Husky. I saw Jay Ross, and I was like, oh, that's just Justin Ross again. But you're right. John Ross, who's a speedster, is possibly out there. I will object to this one. Ross, when healthy, I assume he's talking Justin Ross, because John Ross has proven he's not a number 1. Justin Ross is healthy is probably a diet version.
Justin Ross,
he'll never be healthy again. I mean, whatever he ends up being. I mean, I think I hope that was a little bit tongue in cheek, the comment there, but I don't think that's going to be the case for the Chiefs. But I think you do make a good point, Eric. Listen, as long as they have Mahomes, they'll be okay. Let's see who they get. They may add another receiver in the postseason. I pointed out Isaac Bruce had about 200 yards receiving his first year. I don't think Sky Moore is going to turn into Isaac Bruce, but there is reason to believe that he will be significantly better. So I think there is potential for the wide receiving core to be better and for there to be additions to it to make it even better. But Kadarius Toney, Reid said he expects, another comment from him was he expects him to take a big jump. Jeff, what's reasonable for Kadarius Toney to be? Like, big jump to what?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, there are things to like about Kadarius Toney. You saw the punt return, obviously, in the Super Bowl was a big deal, and he has the lateral quickness that jumps out at you. But again, I always get fearful of guys. And Tyreek Hill, Eric brought up a good point about, but he was such a hard worker, and he was so determined to make himself into a star. That's the big reason why he became a star. Like, Kadarius Toney ran out of the first team he was on. And so what I don't know is what's his mindset going to be. Now he's part of a championship team, and now he's more going to be asked of him. And he's never really been this kind of receiver. I just think it's more of a mystery to me. I think worst case, he could be Mecole Hardman. I mean, maybe best case, he could be Mecole Hardman. Worst case, he could be a guy who just never really gets out of that gadget stage and becomes like who would even fit that bill? I'm trying to think of a receiver who's kind of what's that? Yeah, that kind of guy. Yeah. So I'm not. Andy talks up everybody, so this is nothing new for him. But of all the three guys we mentioned, MVS, Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney to me is the one who is the most dangerous to buy into because he brings the most electric skill set to it, but he's also the rawest player in the group.
By the way, the crowd's giving out Dexter McCluster throwbacks, which is just got that's a strong one. I do think that the thing with Toney we've seen this in Kansas City though, right? We've seen Frank Clark, we've seen. Kareem Hunt was the one that didn't work. But then we've seen, obviously Tyreek Hill had his baggage. Like there is, and I don't, Willie Gay, right? We've seen there is and I don't know if it's an arrogance necessarily, but there is a inflated sense that we can make these guys work more than other teams. And I think Toney's going to be a huge test, right? Because there have been. Let's be honest, Kadarius Toney has been one of Veach's successes when it comes to going after the DeAndre Bakers and the Mike Hugheses and the guys, the Josh Gordons and, John Ross, even all those guys. Toney's already generated more for this team than most of those guys have. And so, it is weird. Even Kelsey, wasn't Kelsey kicked off his college team? We've watched the Chiefs incorporate players, Marcus Peters. We've seen the Chiefs incorporate players who have been problems with other teams and have been very useful here. So it is going to be a test.
I'll say
Dante Hall's a good one.
Yeah, Dante Hall. Renee said Dante Hall as a comp.
Tamarick Vanover's tall though. That was the only issue with Vanover versus.
I don't know how tall he was. I remember
he ran tall.
Yeah, the thing about Toney, I do think there's maybe a little bit more upside than what Mecole Hardman's been, because I think Mecole Hardman has some upside still there, and that's what the Jets are going to try to tap into. We'll talk about him here in a minute, but so I think there's more upside. But I'll say this: one, he has been hurt, right? He's got to do some real work on the muscle injuries, right? The soft tissue injuries. He's got to get beyond that, or we're very quickly going to be the Sammy Watkins stage. And he's clearly tough. Everyone who steps on an NFL field is tough, and he's beyond just minimum level tough in the NFL. He runs with an abandon, and he takes kill shots. He gets bombed on hits. And so I don't see any way that he's ever going to play 16 games. And if he does, it's a miracle. And I think the problem is, to Jeff's point, I think Jeff's right. I think the best role for him, or maybe it was you, Eric, that said, is that Tyreek Hill rookie year, where he runs the ball a couple of times a game. He's a threat every time. Every time he comes on that jet sweep, you have to account for him because they're going to give it to him at least twice. And if you're not defending it, they're going to give it to him 3 or 4 times. And then everything they're giving him is short, which means there's none of these he caught the ball 25 yards down the field and they grabbed his ankle and brought him down. He is taking on 2 and 3 tacklers and he's tough so he doesn't go down. And then he's taking the shots blindsided that he doesn't see coming. That's the fear. So to be a number 1, I don't think there's any way he's on the field enough to be a number 1.
It's really hard to get run out of a team after 1 year with a new regime coming in. That's, I don't know what, I still want to hear the story of what happened with him there, because I can't believe it was just hamstrings or something. you can't tell me that Brian Dable, who had 0 receivers, was just like, we can't use this guy.
That's the one thing. Like they had some guy. What was the guy's name? Like Kadarius Hodgins or Isaiah Hodgins. Like was running rough shot. To Jeff's point, like they didn't have anybody on that team running routes. Like Richie James is playing significant minutes for them, and they didn't want Toney. That is tough. But again, like I sort of agree. Like I think if he becomes, like I always said, Tyreek Hill his rookie year was like what everybody thought DeAnthony Thomas was going to be out of Oregon, and like that can be a useful player, especially like given Hardman. And Chiefs fans will give me crap for this, but like Hardman played up to his draft position. Hardman played up to his draft position, running jet sweeps, some deep balls, and kind of turning it on. And some like he had some really good game. Like the end of 2021, he was fantastic, and it was inconsistency. And maybe that's the name of the game. Maybe Kelsey. Somebody asked, can Valdez-Scantling be consistent? No, like we know this, right? Like we know that he is all over the place, and maybe Sky Moore can be. Sky Moore's efficiency numbers were really good this year. He just didn't get on the field a ton. And the one game that JuJu missed, he was great against the Chargers. So
go ahead.
I think that but the Kelsey's the consistent threat for this team, right?
Yeah.
It's the secondary guy. And to Jeff's point about sort of like, if you want to entice a veteran to come here, they have to buy into this idea that their week to week stuff is not going to be consistent. Like maybe that's just something the Chiefs have to live with in their secondary target. Kelsey's the number one guy, consistent every week, and these other guys are just going to oscillate who's the second guy, and maybe we're asking too much of Toney.
Yeah, but I think everybody would agree the 34-year-old tight end is the number one. Is a there's a limited shelf life on dangerous. That one. Yeah. I want to say that Pat says, do the Chiefs win the Super Bowl without Toney? He's worth it already. Will he carry the Chiefs next year? Not sure he will, but he helped the Chiefs win the Super Bowl immensely in 23. Yeah, we know. No one's trying to take the trophy away. Yeah. Pat. I mean, just to be clear, and I get what you're saying. It's not like the question is not why did the Chiefs go get Kadarius Toney, or has Kadarius Toney ever done anything for the Chiefs? Question is about moving forward next year. And Andy Reid saying he expects a big jump. Like we're all just simply saying his style. Tommy made a great point. He said, some of his injuries are self-inflicted with all the jump cuts and everything. He kind of hurts himself. That's what he did in the playoff game. He's got to find a style where he can stay a little bit healthier and be on the field. If he's going to be a number one, you can't be in the tub all the time, right? Like that's going to be one of the things that has to change. We mentioned Jeff Mecole Hardman, 1 year, $6.5 million. Surprised that that's all he got, and surprised if that's what he got, that the Chiefs weren't willing to step in and make him the guy that they signed.
Yeah, that it sounded like I always get this name wrong. Demarcus Robinson. It sounded like the kind of deal that he came back to get from the Chiefs when he left the first time. We said that's the best that's out there for you. And why wouldn't you just stay where people know who you are and what you can do, and you've won a championship? It's to me when he signed that deal, he got sideways with this team somehow. This past year, with that, whatever that injury was that he had, that groin, hernia, whatever, we never got a full explanation what it was, but it seemed as if when you sign that kind of a deal and you're like, I'm out, that means you're tired of being here. Like that's like Justin. You always talk about Justin Houston not coming back here to play as an edge rusher. It's that kind of mindset. So, and Eric and I were talking about him at the combine. And Eric, I think you were talking about the Chiefs thought he might get $10 million out there on the open market. And so, I was surprised. I didn't see him being that kind of talent, like what JuJu got. But I certainly thought if he's getting that kind of money, he would be back with the Chiefs.
Yeah, I like from what, and it wasn't even just the Chiefs. Like I heard that from multiple people who. Now the funny thing is it was multiple teams that didn't want to offer him that, but they thought that was his market rate. And I think the same thing happened with Juan Thornhill as well, right? Like. I think people thought Thornhill's market was like 9-10, right? And from where I read it, like for both those guys, it was the Chiefs knew what the market. They thought they knew what the market was. They offered below that, but that offer may have been higher than what he ended up getting. But there is that sort of like I think Demarcus Robinson is actually the exception where he'll actually like come crawling back when there's no real offer. I think a lot of times. We've seen it all the time with quarterbacks. Like they'd rather go if they're going to get benched, they'd rather get cut and go somewhere else to be a backup than stay a backup where they already were. Like that happens all the time. And I think with Hardman, like I think the decision on Hardman and Thornhill was made months ago. And, they had this discussion with their agent, and it's like, okay, we're just going to move on. And then once you kind of emotionally, like as some of you just left the company, like once you've emotionally left a place, it's hard to sort of like go back, even if the money is like a little bit, even if the money's better, frankly.
I think also, isn't this maybe the culmination, the continuation of last year? But this year was like they proved they were serious and moved Tyreek Hill. And then this year they had Orlando Brown, who thought he was going to play him. Right? Like, I want this number. And I think Orlando Brown was stunned when the Chiefs were like, fine, we're going to go sign Juwan Taylor. I think he thought, no, wait a minute. It's like that guy who wants to talk shit when you're going to fight. And he wants, guys to jump in front of you and like, oh, I'm going to get you. Good thing he's holding me back. And that's what it is. And that's his plan. And that's what he's been there forever. And then one day at a bar, he starts talking his crap. And then all of a sudden a guy punches him in the face and he's completely stunned. Right. He's like, well, wait a minute. I thought we talked crap for 5 minutes, and hopefully it never came to a fisticuffs. Like, I think the Chiefs in some ways this year are announcing, listen, when we reach out to your agent and we make you an offer, this is the offer. And we're not getting jerked around because we're the freaking Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah. We have Andy Reid, we have Patrick Mahomes, and we're offering you legit money. Like, you either want to play for this team or you don't, and we are not going to be used as a pawn. You use someone else as a pawn. When we offer you, you either take it or get out.
You gravy train 2 rings in your rookie contract on this team. Take it or leave it. Like, honestly, that's how they should act.
Because I put up the thing, somebody had the comment, like when Mecole Hardman talked about it, sounded like the Chiefs didn't even offer. I don't think they offered at the end. I went up to Mecole Hardman during the season in the locker room. I said, hey, any update on the contract? And I kind of talked around with some of the folks in the organization. And the organization was kind of like, yeah, once you get into the season, like, the agents don't really want him to sign. And so I think there may have been an offer last year. Yeah. And it's like, no, I'm going to have a big year and then I'm going to get paid. And they're like, yeah, homie, don't play that. Like that.
Like, if you're a second round pick with speed, like it actually is probably a good gamble to be like, I'm going to get, and then, but honestly,
it's the right move. But my point is, I think it's the right move for the Chiefs to let the league know and send a few guys out there going, dude, I got offered this and I didn't take it, and like it was nowhere to be found later. Like, if they offer you, like, take it. Because they're not screwing around. Like, Juwan Taylor didn't take the offer and shop it to 4 other guys. He's like, bang, I'm in. Okay, fine. We'll play with you. Right? Like, I think they're setting the tone that this is how we do business.
I think it's reasonable when you think about, you can't make everybody happy. Like, for all but a few players, like Chris Jones, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, Juwan Taylor now at this point. Back in the day was Frank Clark. Other than that, like, everybody else is kind of whatever, right? It's the same thing. Like, Valdez-Scantling had a better offer from the Saints, right? And I think a better offer from Green Bay. He takes the Chiefs one because he's like, I want to win a Super Bowl. Like,
and frankly,
it's how it works.
And frankly, maybe why he's still here, because as we talked about, there may have been the option to, or there certainly was financially from a cap standpoint, to cut Marquez Valdez-Scantling and then sign JuJu to a similar deal. That's pretty much what he got. In fact, I think less dollars. He's $25 million on the top end, and incentives that could take him to $33 million. Andy Reid said the Chiefs tried to keep JuJu, Jeff, and on this one, I don't think it's coach speak. I actually kind of buy it a little bit here. He talked a lot about JuJu and how he complimented what Travis Kelce does. Yeah. And I think there may have been a real interest in keeping JuJu. Do you buy what Andy Reid was saying? And
totally. Yeah. I mean, when they went and got JuJu, he was the most sensible option for them, because if you're looking for somebody to be a move the chains guy for you, he's not a burner. And I know, like, sometimes I feel like they get so enamored with the speed guys. Guys like JuJu Smith-Schuster win you a lot of games because it takes some pressure off Kelce. It gives you a target in the middle of the field. And when you can't go down the field, you need to have guys who know how to operate in space, guys who can take shots, guys who can run after the catch. And JuJu was all that. And so, yeah, I totally think they wanted to hold on to him. But I also know that he's like a lot of receivers. He wants to go someplace and be the man. He wants to go someplace and get paid. This was always going to be a one-year deal. He didn't come here 2 years ago for the same reason, because he felt like being with Ben Roethlisberger, I'm getting a lot of balls thrown my way. Yeah. And so I think Eric mentioned it before, and I've always left at this too. It's like there's this myth out there that people will go play for a ring. The only guys who really do that are guys at the end of their careers. The guys who are in their primes are trying to get paid. I always tell people the 3 things players care about the most: money, quality of life, and then winning comes in the conversation.
Yeah.
And JuJu
And their production, to the point about, MBS wanting to go to, like, he wanted to play with another MVP quarterback more than he wanted to win. Like, I agree with you, Jeff. I think that the really interesting part about this is, remember in November and October, we're talking about JuJu being a $15 to $20 million wideout. I think that some of that is the market just changing. Like, no one was going to give a Christian Kirk contract, and no one really did. But the other part was, again, we all give this time. JuJu, he went over his receiving prop twice in the last 8 games of the season. Like, he was another guy that needed the Chiefs more than the Chiefs needed him, right? And so he's going to go to New England. He's probably going to catch 38 balls for 614 yards or something like that from Mac Jones. And he's going to get paid. But, it's another one where I wonder if the Chiefs would have offered JuJu 14. Like, I don't know. I don't think they did. But if they would have offered him midseason, I bet you that offer probably was better than what the open market was for guys like Jacoby Myers, for guys like JuJu. DJ Chark got 1 year, $5 million. Like, that's a good wide receiver. It's a weird situation. A lot of these guys, they look at the market a season ago and they say, oh, that's what's going to happen this year. And at the wide receiver position, it was not. It was snake eyes for a lot of those guys.
And it's not as good a class. I think that's part of it. Kenny Galladay's still out there. I mean, if you want to dream a dream and get Julio Jones healthy for part of the year. But the Chiefs, here's the other part of the equation. They don't have much money, right? No. There's not a lot to spend. So it's going to have to be a veteran player in all likelihood who's willing to take the 1 year deal, probably with a low base and incentives. It's going to be JuJu like in the way it's signed, because that's about all. And they have to be unlikely to be earned so that they won't be counted. So it might be a flyer on a guy who's routinely hurt so that they can put game and catch and incentives like that, that they can count as unlikely to be earned, so it won't count against.
And the other part, Petro, you make a great point. And the other part is, like, when you think about the Hopkins thing, you're either paying the 19.5 up front or you're redoing his deal. And redoing his deal, and I'm just throwing it, redoing his deal is cash up front. And the place where the Chiefs they're better off with the cap right now being, 4.5 than they are cash. Right, like they've already, when you think about every time you can convert Mahomes, it's like, well, every time you convert Mahomes, you got to pay that money, right? Every time you convert a roster bonus to a signing bonus, you got to pay that money. Every time you make the P5 guaranteed, it ends up, you got to put that thing in escrow. And every single time you do that, it's not cap, but it's cash. And this is a front office or like an ownership group that on a cash perspective year to year it's not in the upper half of the league in terms of what they pay, right? So that's another part where everybody's like, oh, the cap's fake. Sure. Okay. For any one player, you can reorganize the cap, but you can't give more money to the owners, right? Like the owners can't forward another, so to your point, like they don't have really, and they have 11 draft picks with 4.7 million in space. Like they're going to have to create space just to pay their draft picks.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, that's going to do it for us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. We're proudly brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lots. They're hiring as well right now at all positions. Project manager, dump truck drivers, operators, crew members, starting pay up to $30 per hour based upon experience with paid time off and insurance, just to name a few of the benefits. Check out GannAsphalt.com for more information. Let them know you heard about them here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast on a Tuesday. We go back to back. If you're an NFL fan, our 2 Deep podcast coming up next. If you've never heard that, check it out wherever you get your podcasts. So for Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Sumer Sports, my name is Soren Petro, saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red Gold.